a 10-year-old German Shepherd abandoned at a high kill shelter in rural Tennessee, his body ravaged by neglect and his spirit crushed beyond recognition. Veterinarians gave him months to live at best. But what happened when one couple refused to let his final days be spent alone? Get ready for a true story that will show you the extraordinary resilience of these remarkable dogs and the life-changing power of compassion. The Southeastern Tennessee Animal Rescue Facility in Hamilton County wasn't designed for long-term care. A concrete building with chain-link kennels, it served primarily as a holding facility for stray and surrendered animals, with euthanasia rates exceeding 70% for large breed seniors. For the staff, the arrival of yet another elderly dog on a rainy April morning in 20 seemed like just another heartbreaking entry in their daily log. Animal Control Officer James Whitfield had responded to a call about an abandoned dog at a foreclosed property outside Chattanooga. What he found was a severely neglected German Shepherd, estimated to be around 10 years old, chained to a dilapidated doghouse behind a home that had been empty for at least 2 weeks, according to neighbors. He was just skin and bones, Whitfield later told the local news, probably 30 pounds underweight, with infected pressure sores and muscle atrophy so severe he could barely stand. But what struck me most was his eyes, completely empty, like he'd given up on humanity altogether. The dog, temporarily named Major, due to his German Shepherd lineage, showed no resistance when loaded into the animal control vehicle. Blood tests at the shelter's clinic revealed severe anemia, kidney dysfunction, and heartworm disease. His coat was matted with dried mud and feces, his nails grown so long they curled into his paw pads, causing infection. Dr. Melissa Chen, the shelter's visiting veterinarian from the University of Tennessee's veterinary program, documented Major's condition with clinical detachment in her report, but added a personal note. Subject displays severe physical deterioration, consistent with long-term neglect, but responds to gentle handling, suggesting prior socialization. Despite condition, no aggression observed. What made Major's case particularly poignant was the discovery of a faded military-style tag embedded in his matted fur. Though partially illegible, the name Sergeant was still visible, suggesting he had once been a cherished companion, perhaps to a service member. How he had fallen from honored companion to forgotten prisoner was a mystery that would never be solved. The shelter couldn't justify extensive medical intervention for a dog with Major's poor prognosis and advanced age. German Shepherds typically lived 10-13 years, even in good health, and Major's condition suggested he was approaching the end of his natural lifespan. Standard protocol dictated a 72-hour hold, followed by euthanasia if no owner came forward or rescue organizations stepped in. We put his photo on our Facebook page, but honestly, we didn't expect much interest, explained Shannon Torres, the shelter's social media coordinator. Senior dogs are hard enough to place. Seniors with extensive medical needs are almost impossible. As Major lay on his thin shelter blanket, accepting medications and gentle handling with a detached stoicism typical of his breed, the clock was ticking. His story might have ended there, another statistic in America's overwhelmed animal shelter system, if not for a series of coincidences that would lead to an extraordinary second chance. Beth Harrison, a volunteer photographer who documented shelter animals for adoption websites, had stopped by on her lunch break from her job at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee. Something about Major's dignified bearing, despite his condition, compelled her to spend extra time on his photos, capturing not just his obvious physical deterioration, but also the subtle alertness in his eyes when she spoke softly to him. "There's still something in there," she told the staff as she uploaded the images. "Someone just needs to reach him." Those photos, posted to Pet Finder and the shelter's social media accounts, would set in motion a chain of events that no one at the facility could have anticipated. A journey that would challenge conventional wisdom about senior dog adoption and reveal the remarkable healing power of proper care and genuine connection. 500 miles away in rural Virginia, 62-year-old retired Army Colonel David Michaels was scrolling through Pet Finder on his iPad while his wife Linda, a former hospice nurse, prepared dinner in their farmhouse kitchen. The couple had recently lost their 12-year-old German Shepherd, Rex, to cancer, leaving a dog-shaped hole in their lives and their 15-acre property outside Roanoke. "I wasn't really looking to adopt," David later explained in an interview with The Dodo. "I was just torturing myself, I guess. But then I saw Major's face, and something about his eyes reminded me of the soldiers I'd worked with who had seen too much, still present but withdrawn to some inner sanctuary." The Michaels had a history of adopting older German shepherds, appreciating their settled temperaments and the satisfaction of giving them comfortable final years. Their property, complete with gently rolling hills and a spring-fed pond, had been home to 3 previous senior shepherds. But Major's condition gave even these experienced adopters pause. "David showed me the picture, and my first reaction was, 'That poor dog needs to be released from his suffering,'" Linda recalled. "But then I read his story and saw that spark in his eyes. As a nurse, I've learned never to underestimate the will to live when there's still quality of life to be had." After a serious discussion about the financial and emotional commitment required, the couple contacted the Tennessee shelter. Their application, with references from their veterinarian at Roanoke Animal Hospital and previous adoption history, moved quickly through the approval process. Within 48 hours, David was making the 8-hour drive south in his Ford F-150, the back seat already prepared with orthopedic dog bedding purchased from LL Bean and a specialized harness system to help support Major's weakened frame. The shelter staff were visibly moved when they learned someone was actually coming for the broken shepherd. "We had started calling him the Major Miracle because he had lasted beyond what we expected given his condition," Shannon explained. "The fact that someone was willing to drive so far for a dog in his state restored our faith a little." When David first met Major in the shelter's meet and greet room, the dog showed little reaction. No tail wag, no approach, merely a slight turning of his head toward this new human. Dr. Chen provided a detailed medical history and care instructions, including medications for pain management, kidney support, and heartworm treatment. "I need you to understand, this dog may only have weeks or months," she cautioned David. "The kindest gift you may need to give him is a peaceful end when his quality of life diminishes." David nodded, his military bearing evident in his straight posture, but softened by the gentle way he approached the shepherd. "He'll have whatever time he has left with dignity and comfort," he promised. "No one should die alone, human or animal." The loading of Major into the truck was a solemn affair. The shepherd needed to be carried, his muscle wasting too severe for him to climb in himself. He settled onto the orthopedic bed without resistance, accepting this new change with the same detached stoicism he had shown throughout his shelter stay. For the long drive north, David played classical music, Bach's cello suites, the same music that had comforted their previous shepherd during thunderstorms. He stopped every 2 hours to offer water and gentle walks, supporting Major's hindquarters with the specialized harness. The shepherd accepted these attentions passively, eating small amounts of the premium canned food David offered, but showing no enthusiasm. "It was like transporting a patient rather than a pet," David recalled. He was physically present, but emotionally absent. I started to wonder if Linda had been right. Maybe the kindest thing would be to let him go. As they crossed the Virginia state line as sunset painted the Blue Ridge Mountains in watercolor hues, David found himself talking to the silent passenger. He shared stories about their farm, about Rex and the other shepherds who had lived out their golden years there, and finally, about his own military service. "I don't know what happened to you, old soldier," he said, glancing at the rearview mirror where he could see Major's reflection, "but you're not alone anymore. It might have been a trick of the fading light, but..." David would later swear that something changed in Major's eyes at that moment. A slight shift from emptiness toward awareness, the first hint that somewhere inside the broken body, a spirit still waited to be rekindled. The first week at the Michaels farm proceeded with the methodical precision one might expect from a retired military officer and a former medical professional. Linda and David converted their sunroom into a rehabilitation space for Major, with a therapeutic Orvis memory foam dog bed positioned to allow views of the bird feeders and pasture beyond. A detailed medication schedule was posted on the refrigerator, alongside feeding times and physical therapy exercises recommended by their veterinarian, Dr. Sarah Jenkins. Major's initial veterinary examination at Roanoke Animal Hospital had confirmed the Tennessee shelter's assessment, while adding several concerning diagnoses: moderate hip dysplasia, dental disease requiring multiple extractions, and a heart murmur that would need monitoring. The bill for initial treatment exceeded $12,200, the first installment of what would ultimately be over $5,000 in medical expenses. Worth every penny, David insisted when interviewed later. Some people spend that much on a vacation. We were investing in a life. For the first 3 days, Major remained almost completely withdrawn. He would eat small amounts when hand-fed, take his medications hidden in pill pockets, and allow himself to be carried outside for bathroom breaks, but showed no interest in his surroundings or his new human companions. He slept nearly 20 hours a day, his body focused on the enormous task of healing. The first small breakthrough came on the 4th morning. Linda had established a routine of sitting beside Major's bed while drinking her morning coffee, not forcing interaction but simply being present. She would read aloud from whatever book she was currently enjoying, a habit she had developed during her hospice nursing career. "I was reading All Creatures Great and Small by James Herriot. Seemed appropriate when I felt something against my arm," Linda recalled, emotion still evident in her voice months later. Major had shifted slightly so his muzzle was just touching me. It wasn't much, but it was deliberate. It was contact. These tiny victories became the milestones by which they measured progress. The first time Major managed to stand unassisted for more than a few seconds. The day he walked from the sunroom to the kitchen without the support harness. The morning Linda found him lying in a sun patch rather than his bed, having moved of his own volition to feel the warmth on his thin frame. David applied the same patient determination to Major's rehabilitation that had characterized his military career. Using techniques learned from YouTube videos by veterinary physical therapists and guidance from Dr. Jenkins, he performed daily massage and passive range of motion exercises on Major's atrophied muscles. He installed non-slip runners from Wayfair over the hardwood floors to give the shepherd more confident footing, and built a carpeted ramp leading to a sheltered outdoor area where Major could begin to experience the sensory enrichment of fresh air and natural sounds. Nutrition played a crucial role in the shepherd's physical recovery. Linda researched senior dog diets extensively, consulting with a veterinary nutritionist from Virginia Tech's veterinary program. She began preparing meals that balanced the protein needs of muscle recovery with the limitations of Major's compromised kidneys. Lean turkey, fish, specialized supplements, and vegetables, all precisely measured and prepared with the same care she had once given to her most fragile patients. By the end of the 2nd week, the physical transformation had begun. Major's coat, regularly brushed and treated with medicated shampoo, began to regain some luster. The pressure sores started to heal. He gained 3 pounds, a significant improvement for a dog who had been severely malnourished. But the emotional awakening lagged behind the physical recovery. Major would now make eye contact briefly and occasionally accept petting, but the deep withdrawal remained. He showed no interest in toys, didn't respond to his name, and displayed none of the personality traits typical of his breed. No protectiveness, no curiosity, no engagement with his environment. "The lights were on," David explained, "but no one seemed to be home yet. We knew he was physically feeling better, but it was like his spirit was still locked away somewhere." That changed on the 17th day when an unexpected visitor arrived at the farm. Emily Martinez, David and Linda's 26-year-old granddaughter, drove up from her apartment in Richmond for a weekend visit. A kindergarten teacher with a naturally exuberant personality, Emily hadn't been told much about Major's background or condition. She bounded into the house with her characteristic energy, calling out greetings, and then stopped short when she saw Major lying in the sunroom. Unlike her grandparents, who had approached the shepherd with careful, measured movements, Emily immediately sat on the floor beside him, speaking in the same sing-song voice she used with her young students. "Well, hello there, handsome boy. Aren't you just the most distinguished gentleman? Look at that noble face. I bet you have stories to tell, don't you?" What happened next brought tears to Linda's eyes. Major, who had acknowledged the newcomer with his now typical brief glance, actually lifted his head. He looked directly at Emily for several long seconds. Then, in a gesture that seemed monumental given his previous detachment, he shifted his body and placed his head in her lap. Emily, unaware of the significance, simply continued chatting and gently stroking his ears. But David and Linda exchanged glances that communicated volumes. Something about this young, uninhibited energy had reached past Major's defenses in a way their careful medical approach hadn't. "I think," Linda whispered to David, "we've been treating him like a patient when what he needed was to be treated like a dog." It was a pivotal realization that would reshape their approach to Major's rehabilitation and open the door to the remarkable transformation that was about to begin. Following the breakthrough with Emily, David and Linda made a conscious shift in their approach to Major's care. While continuing the medical treatments and physical therapy, they began incorporating more normal dog life activities rather than treating him solely as a patient. Linda purchased a selection of plush toys from Chewy.com, placing them near Major's bed without pressure or expectation. David began taking his morning coffee in the fenced pasture, bringing Major on a loose leash to simply sit together in the fresh air. They switched from clinical, goal-oriented interaction to the kind of everyday companionship that had characterized their relationships with previous dogs. "We stopped focusing so much on what was wrong with him and started treating him like he was already whole," Linda explained. It sounds simple, but it made all the difference. The transformation accelerated with remarkable speed. On a warm morning in early May, about 4 weeks after his arrival, Major initiated play for the first time, nudging a plush squirrel toy toward David with his nose. The action was tentative, almost questioning, but unmistakably intentional. David, a man not given to public displays of emotion, admitted to being so moved he had to turn away momentarily. It wasn't just that he wanted to play, he recalled. It was that he was choosing to connect, to engage. He was making the decision to join our world. Each day brought new signs of Major's emerging personality. They discovered he had a particular fondness for classical music, especially cello pieces, his ears perking up whenever Linda played Bach. He revealed a surprising enthusiasm for the farm's garden hose, attempting to chase the water stream despite his limited mobility. His food preferences became apparent: chicken over beef, sweet potatoes over white, and an unexpected passion for frozen blueberries as treats. The physical changes paralleled the emotional awakening. By the 6-week mark, Major had gained nearly 15 pounds, his frame filling out to a healthier silhouette. The specialized diet and medication had improved his coat dramatically, the once dull fur now showing the rich black and tan coloration typical of his breed. His muscle tone improved with daily assisted walks that gradually increased in duration, from the initial few yards to quarter-mile circuits of the nearest pasture. Dr. Jenkins documented his progress during bi-weekly checkups, noting with cautious optimism that his blood work showed improved kidney function and that the heartworm treatment was progressing without complications. "I've rarely seen this level of physical recovery in a dog his age, with multiple serious conditions," she noted in his medical record. The combination of appropriate medical intervention and exceptional home care is making a significant difference. Perhaps the most profound change was in Major's eyes. The vacant stare that had so disturbed the shelter staff was replaced by an alert, engaged expression that tracked movement and, increasingly, sought out human interaction. He began to make sustained eye contact, that profound connection that dog owners recognize as true communication. We started calling him Benjamin Button, Linda joked, referring to the fictional character who ages in reverse. Every day, he seemed younger, more vibrant. The most significant milestone came on a Sunday afternoon in June, when the Michaels hosted a small gathering of neighbors for a backyard barbecue. Despite being generally friendly people, they had limited visitors during Major's first months, concerned about overwhelming him. This modest gathering of 4 guests was their first social event since his arrival. Major, who had previously shown no protective instincts whatsoever, positioned himself on the patio where he could observe the entire gathering. When the guests arrived, he observed carefully but without anxiety, accepting gentle introductions. As the afternoon progressed, he remained alert but relaxed, until the moment that revealed just how far he had come. Robert Chen, the Michaels' nearest neighbor, accidentally dropped a serving platter, creating a sudden loud crash. Before anyone could react, Major was on his feet, placing himself between the perceived threat and Linda, his posture alert but not aggressive, a perfect demonstration of the German Shepherd's instinctive, protective nature. The moment passed quickly as Major realized there was no danger, but its significance was not lost on David and Linda. This wasn't just a dog recovering physically. This was a German Shepherd reclaiming his inherent nature, his purpose. "That's when we knew," David said simply. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was living. As June turned to July and Major's strength continued to improve, the Michaels began making plans for his future. Though still a senior dog with health conditions that would require ongoing management, his prognosis had shifted from palliative care to potentially years of good quality life. They discussed fall activities, wondering if he might enjoy gentle hikes when the weather cooled, and even researched canine cognitive enrichment activities suitable for senior dogs. What they couldn't know was that Major's most profound impact was yet to come, and that the shepherd they had rescued was about to return the favor in a way no one could have anticipated. By late July, Major had established himself as a full-fledged family member in the Michaels household. His daily routine included 3 short walks around the property, supervised outdoor time in the fenced garden where he had developed a fascination with butterfly visitors, and an evening ritual of lying between David and Linda's recliners while they watched the PBS NewsHour. His personality, initially hidden beneath layers of trauma and illness, emerged as quietly dignified with unexpected moments of playfulness. He developed an endearing habit of carrying a plush toy to greet visitors, a behavior Dr. Jenkins suggested might have been part of his training in his earlier life. Though never boisterous, he would occasionally initiate play sessions with David, particularly in the cool early mornings. He became very much a German Shepherd again, Linda observed. Alert, attentive, always aware of where we were and what was happening around the property, but with this gentleness that seemed to come from his difficult journey. The bond between Major and his new humans deepened in subtle but meaningful ways. He began sleeping beside their bed rather than in his sunroom bed, positioning himself near the bedroom door in a classically protective posture. He developed individual ways of interacting with each of them, bringing toys to David, leaning gently against Linda's legs when she cooked. His health continued to stabilize. The heartworm treatment, while debilitating at times, progressed successfully through the staged protocol recommended by the American Heartworm Society. His weight reached 6 pounds, still somewhat lean for his frame, but a remarkable improvement from the 52 pounds recorded at his initial veterinary visit. The kidney values in his blood work, while not normal, had stabilized enough that Dr. Jenkins felt confident extending the interval between checkups to monthly rather than bi-weekly. "We were starting to relax into a new normal," David explained, "not taking anything for granted, but no longer living with that constant sense that each day might be his last." The event that would reveal the true depth of Major's transformation occurred on August 15th, A sweltering Virginia night when the temperature remained above 80 degrees even after sunset. Linda, who had been experiencing mild seasonal allergies, took an antihistamine before bed. The medication, combined with the running air conditioner, put her into an unusually deep sleep. Around 2:15 a.m., David was awakened by Major's paws on his chest, not a behavior the typically well-mannered shepherd had ever displayed before. The dog was clearly agitated, whining softly and moving between David and the bedroom door. My first thought was that he needed to go out, David recalled. But when I got up to take him downstairs, he headed in the opposite direction toward our bedroom's sitting area. Following Major's lead, David discovered Linda slumped in her reading chair, unconscious and struggling to breathe, her lips showing a bluish tint that indicated severe oxygen deprivation. A nearly empty glass on the side table contained the remains of what should have been hot tea but had a peculiar odor. David immediately called 911 while attempting to rouse his wife. The Roanoke County emergency dispatcher instructed him to place Linda on the floor in a recovery position while waiting for paramedics. Throughout the crisis, Major remained close by, his demeanor alert but calm. When the ambulance arrived, the paramedics quickly identified the issue. Linda had accidentally used a decorative almond-scented oil in her tea instead of the honey that was kept in a similar container. She had severe nut allergies documented in her medical records, but apparently forgotten in her antihistamine-influenced state. If she hadn't been found for another 30 minutes, the outcome could have been catastrophic, explained Dr. Michael Reed, the emergency physician who treated Linda at Carillon Roanoke Memorial Hospital. The combination of the allergic reaction and the sedative effect of the antihistamine created a particularly dangerous situation. Linda was treated with epinephrine, steroids, and supplemental oxygen, remaining hospitalized for observation for 24 hours before being released with a prescription for an EpiPen and instructions for follow-up care. The medical report specifically noted, patient discovered unconscious by husband after being alerted by family dog. For the Michaels, the significance of the event extended far beyond the medical emergency itself. Major, the dog who had been deemed unadoptable, who had arrived so broken that euthanasia had seemed the humane option, had saved Linda's life through a combination of awareness, intelligence, and bond with his humans that no one could have predicted during those early days. We thought we were saving him, David said simply. It turned out to be the other way around. News of Major's heroism spread quickly through the local community. The Roanoke Times ran a feature story titled, "Second Chance Shepherd Saves Owner's Life," complete with photos of Major in his now healthy state beside a recovering Linda. The article detailed his journey from neglected senior dog to beloved family member and unexpected hero. When asked by the reporter what might have happened if they had followed the conventional wisdom about not adopting elderly dogs with severe health problems, Linda was unequivocal. I wouldn't be here to have this conversation. The publicity brought unexpected attention to the issue of senior dog adoption. The Southeastern Tennessee Animal Rescue reported a significant increase in inquiries about older dogs in their care, with several successful adoptions directly attributed to people who had read about Major's story. For Major himself, the emergency and its aftermath seemed to complete a circle of healing. In the days following Linda's return from the hospital, observers noted a subtle but significant change in his demeanor. A new confidence, as if his actions had somehow restored his sense of purpose and place in the world. It was like watching a puzzle's final piece click into place, Emily observed during her next visit. He went from being a dog who was loved and cared for to being a dog who knew he was needed. This transformation from rescued to rescuer marked a profound milestone in Major's journey. But as the Michaels would soon discover, his story was about to take another unexpected turn that would extend his impact far beyond their family circle. As August turned to September, the Michaels settled back into their routine with a deeper appreciation for Major's presence in their lives. Linda recovered fully from her allergic reaction, though she now wore a medical alert bracelet and kept EpiPens in strategic locations throughout the house. David installed childproof locks on the cabinet containing cooking oils and extracts, a precaution that amused their friends but reflected their new awareness of how quickly circumstances could change. Major's local fame following the newspaper article resulted in occasional visitors stopping by the farm to meet the hero shepherd. Though initially concerned about how he would react to the attention, the Michaels were pleasantly surprised by his composed response to strangers. He seemed to particularly enjoy the visits from families with children, displaying a gentle patience that contrasted with his protective alertness around adults. He has this remarkable ability to adjust his behavior to whoever he's interacting with, Linda noted. With children, he's completely gentle. With delivery people, he's watchful but polite. It's like he assesses each situation and decides who needs what from him. This behavioral flexibility caught the attention of Stephanie Morales, a visitor with professional interest. As the director of the Roanoke Valley Therapy Dogs program, she had read about Major's story and asked permission to observe him with the Michaels. "What I'm seeing is a natural therapy dog temperament," she explained after watching Major interact with several different visitors. "The calm demeanor, the ability to read emotional states, the gentle approach to those who seem vulnerable, these are traits we look for but rarely find so developed without specific training." The suggestion that Major might have potential as a therapy dog initially seemed far-fetched to the Michaels. Given his age and medical history, they had focused on providing him a peaceful retirement rather than a new career. But Stephanie was persuasive in outlining a limited role that would accommodate his physical limitations while allowing him to use his natural abilities. "We have a reading program at the Roanoke County Public Library where children who struggle with reading skills practice by reading to therapy dogs," she explained. "The dogs provide a non-judgmental audience that reduces anxiety for kids who are self-conscious about reading aloud. It's gentle work. The dogs mostly lie on special mats, while the children sit beside them reading." After consulting with Dr. Jenkins about whether such activity would be appropriate given Major's health conditions, the Michaels agreed to a trial session. The veterinarian approved with certain limitations: sessions kept under 45 minutes, scheduled at least 3 days apart, and immediately terminated if Major showed any signs of stress or fatigue. Major's first official therapy session took place at the South County Library on a quiet Tuesday afternoon in late September. 4 children were scheduled at 15-minute intervals, each bringing a book of their choice to read to their canine audience. The Michaels were prepared for various outcomes, including the possibility that the unfamiliar environment might overwhelm Major or that he might remain aloof from the children. What none of them anticipated was just how naturally he would take to the role. From the moment the first child, a shy 8-year-old named Marcus, sat down beside him, Major seemed to understand exactly what was expected. He settled onto his special mat, maintained calm eye contact with the boy, and appeared to listen attentively as Marcus haltingly read a story about dinosaurs. The transformation in the children was remarkable, Linda recalled. These were kids who were reluctant readers, some with learning disabilities or anxiety about reading aloud. But with Major, they relaxed. They didn't worry about mistakes, they just read. The library staff noted that several of the children read more fluently to Major than they had in previous sessions with other therapy dogs or human tutors. One participant, a young girl named Sophia, who had selective mutism and rarely spoke in public settings, actually asked Major a question about the story. A breakthrough that brought her mother to tears. "There's something about him that makes people feel safe," Stephanie observed. "I've worked with therapy dogs for 15 years, and it's rare to see this level of intuitive connection, especially from a dog without formal therapy training." Major's success in the reading program led to a regular twice-weekly schedule at the library. The sessions became so popular that the program expanded to accommodate more children, with a waiting list forming despite the addition of 2 more therapy dog teams. Word of the program's success spread through educational circles in Roanoke County. In October, the Michaels received a call from Dr. Robert Langley, principal of Blue Ridge Elementary School, where over 40% of students read below grade level. He asked if Major might participate in a pilot program at the school, working with students who had shown minimal progress with traditional reading interventions. Again, after careful consideration of Major's health and stamina, the Michaels agreed to a limited trial. 1 morning session per week with appropriate breaks and a quiet, dedicated space where Major wouldn't be overwhelmed by the general school environment. The school program, dubbed Reading with Major, quickly produced measurable results. Students who participated showed an average 30% increase in reading engagement time and a marked improvement in reading fluency compared to control groups receiving the same amount of time with human reading specialists. There's actual science behind why this works, explained Dr. Elaine Harper, the school's reading specialist. Reading to dogs has been shown to lower cortisol levels, the stress hormone, and increase oxytocin, which is associated with bonding and positive emotional states. For struggling readers, this physiological change creates optimal conditions for learning. The most profound impact was observed in students with special needs, particularly those with autism spectrum disorders or anxiety conditions. Major seemed to have a special affinity for these children, sometimes adjusting his position to create closer contact with those who appeared most nervous. One student, a 10-year-old boy named Tyler with high-functioning autism who had previously refused to read aloud under any circumstances, began bringing specific books he wanted to share with Major. His teacher noted that he appeared to be selecting stories he thought the dog would enjoy, a remarkable demonstration of empathy from a child who typically struggled with perspective taking. "He's not just listening to these kids read," David observed after watching several sessions. "He's giving them something they desperately need, acceptance without judgment. It's changing how they see themselves as learners." By November, Major's therapy work had expanded to include monthly visits to the Roanoke Veterans Administration Medical Center, where his calm presence and his own story of resilience resonated deeply with veterans in the rehabilitation unit. His special connection with older veterans, particularly those with post-traumatic stress disorder, caught the attention of Dr. Marcus Wilson, the center's director of therapeutic services. "There's a mutual recognition that happens sometimes between our veterans and service dogs, or dogs like Major who have overcome trauma," Dr. Wilson explained. "It opens doorways to therapeutic conversations that might otherwise take months to facilitate." Throughout this period of expanding service, the Michaels remained vigilant about Major's health and energy levels. His medical conditions required ongoing management, regular medication for his kidneys, a carefully calibrated diet, and moderate exercise to maintain his muscle tone without stressing his arthritic joints. After each therapy session, he would typically sleep deeply for several hours, his body requiring recovery time. "We were constantly monitoring, ready to scale back if it seemed too much for him," Linda emphasized. But what we observed was that the therapy work actually seemed to energize him in some fundamental way. He had purpose again. Dr. Jenkins, who continued to provide Major's primary veterinary care, noted with professional amazement that his health remained stable despite the initial poor prognosis. His most recent blood work showed kidney values that, while not normal, had not deteriorated as expected. His heartworm treatment had concluded successfully, and his weight remained appropriate for his frame. "I can't say definitively that his work as a therapy dog is contributing to his physical health," the veterinarian stated carefully when interviewed for a follow-up article in the Roanoke Times. "But there is growing evidence in both human and veterinary medicine that purpose and positive social connection can influence physical well-being. At minimum, it certainly isn't hurting him." As the calendar moved toward the holiday season, the Michaels found themselves reflecting on the extraordinary year that had passed since Major entered their lives. The shepherd who had arrived as a broken, seemingly end-of-life rescue had not only recovered, but found a calling that was touching dozens of lives beyond their family circle. When we adopted him, we thought we were offering him a comfortable place to die with dignity, David said. We never imagined we were actually giving him a place to truly live and to help others in the process. What none of them could anticipate was that Major's greatest contribution was yet to come, one that would extend his legacy far beyond the individual lives he had already touched. As the one-year anniversary of Major's adoption approached in April 22, the Michaels decided to host a small celebration at their farm. What began as a modest gathering mushroomed as various people touched by Major's story asked to attend. Children from the reading program and their parents, veterans from the VA Center, volunteers and staff from the Therapy Dog organization, even journalists who had covered his journey. The event, held on a perfect spring Saturday, brought together over 60 people from diverse backgrounds and circumstances, all connected by their relationship with one remarkable German Shepherd. Major, now a healthy 79 pounds with a glossy coat that belied his age, greeted guests with dignified composure, seemingly aware that he was the guest of honor. Looking at him now, circulating through this crowd with such confidence, it's almost impossible to reconcile this dog with the broken animal we met a year ago, Linda remarked to Shannon Torres, who had made the journey from Tennessee for the celebration. The shelter's social media coordinator had brought with her a printed copy of Major's original intake photo, a stark reminder of the emaciated, defeated animal who had been given so little chance of survival. During the celebration, County Commissioner Eleanor Wilson presented the Michaels with a proclamation declaring April 15th as Senior Dog Adoption Awareness Day in Roanoke County. The document specifically cited Major's story as exemplifying the extraordinary potential of senior shelter dogs when given proper care, dignity, and purpose. But the most significant announcement came from Dr. Langley, the elementary school principal, who had been working behind the scenes with the county school board and several community partners. Today, I'm proud to announce the creation of the Major Reading Initiative, he revealed to enthusiastic applause. Thanks to a grant from the Thompson Educational Foundation and partnership with Roanoke Valley Therapy Dogs, we'll be establishing reading therapy dog programs in all 11 elementary schools in our district, with priority focus on schools with the highest percentage of struggling readers. The program would include training for both dogs and handlers, appropriate facilities within each school, and a research component to track outcomes in collaboration with Virginia Tech's College of Education. The $175,000 grant would fund the program for an initial 3-year period, with matching funds already pledged by 2 local businesses for subsequent years if the results proved positive. None of this would have happened without Major showing us what was possible, Dr. Langley acknowledged, gesturing toward the shepherd who sat alertly beside David. One dog has changed the trajectory for potentially thousands of children in our community. The initiative would eventually extend beyond its original scope. By the end of 22, the program had been adopted by neighboring Montgomery County schools, and inquiries had come from educational districts in 5 states. A dedicated website featuring Major's story and practical guidance for establishing similar programs received over 10,000 visits in its first month online. For David and Linda, the most meaningful moment of the celebration came when several of the reading program children presented them with a handmade book titled Major, the Dog Who Listened. Each child had contributed a page describing what reading to Major had meant to them, illustrated with artwork ranging from careful crayon portraits to elaborate colored pencil scenes of Major in his therapy vest. He doesn't laugh when I mess up words, wrote 8-year-old Marcus, whose reading level had improved by nearly 2 grades since joining the program. Major looks at me like I'm important, added Sophia, who had overcome her selective mutism to become an active participant in class discussions. The book's final page featured a group photo of all the children with Major, surrounded by their signatures and a simple statement, "Thank you for sharing Major with us." The celebration also marked a moment of personal reflection for the Michaels. David, typically reticent about his emotions, spoke briefly to thank the gathered guests. When we brought Major home, we thought we were doing something kind for a dog who had known too much cruelty, he said, his voice occasionally catching. We never imagined how much he would give back, not just to us, but to this entire community. He's taught us that sometimes the beings who seem most broken have the most to offer if we're willing to see their potential. Linda, standing beside her husband with her hand resting on Major's head, added her own perspective. As a nurse, I spent my career believing in the possibility of healing even in the most difficult cases. But Major has shown us that true healing goes beyond physical recovery. It's about finding purpose and connection. The couple had recently been approached by an editor from Revell Publishing about sharing Major's story in book form. Initially hesitant to step into the public eye, they ultimately agreed after considering how the shepherd's journey might inspire other potential adopters to consider senior dogs or special needs animals. The resulting memoir, Major's Mission, A Senior Shepherd's Journey from Broken to Healer, was scheduled for release the following spring, with a portion of proceeds designated for senior dog medical care at shelters across the Southeast. As the celebration wound down and guests departed, carrying commemorative paw print cookies and bookmarks with Major's photo, the Michaels found themselves sitting on their porch swing with the elderly shepherd resting at their feet. The property was quiet again, but the energy of the day, the connections formed, the initiatives launched, the lives touched, remained palpable. It's remarkable, David observed, how one decision can lead to so much unexpected good. Linda nodded, watching as Major lifted his head to track a butterfly crossing the garden, a simple pleasure that would have been unimaginable during those early days when survival itself seemed uncertain. I think about that shelter photo sometimes, she said quietly. How close he came to being a statistic. Just another old dog who ran out of time and options. How many others like him never get their second chance? The question lingered in the air, challenging and hopeful simultaneously. Major's extraordinary journey from neglected senior dog to community hero had created ripples that would continue expanding long after this anniversary celebration, through the reading program bearing his name, through the children gaining confidence under his patient watch, through the veterans finding connection in his steady presence, and through all those who would hear his story and perhaps see senior shelter dogs with new eyes. For Major himself, now approaching 12 years of age, the future remained uncertain. His kidney values had stabilized but not improved, and his arthritis required daily medication. Dr. Jenkins had been honest about the reality that, even with excellent care, German shepherds rarely lived beyond 13 or 14 years. Yet watching him now, alert and engaged with his surroundings, it was difficult to see him as a dog in his final chapter. Something essential had been rekindled in him, a vitality that transcended his physical limitations and seemed to defy the calendar. However much time he has left, David said, voicing both their thoughts, it will be time with purpose. As if understanding, Major rose from his resting place and moved to stand between them, his body leaning gently against their legs in the characteristic shepherd pose, present, protective, connected. In that quiet moment on the porch, with evening light gilding the fields beyond, the circle of rescue seemed complete. The broken shepherd had been healed, and in turn, had become a healer. Yet Major's story continues to unfold, touching new lives each day through the programs bearing his name and the countless individuals inspired by his journey from discard to dignity. In senior shelters across America, dogs like him wait for someone to see past their gray muzzles and physical challenges to the loyal hearts and wisdom they still have to offer. If Major's story has touched your heart, please hit that subscribe button now, smash the like button, and turn on notifications. Share this video with anyone who needs a reminder that second chances sometimes lead to miracles. And remember, sometimes the most broken beings have the most to give when offered a chance to heal and serve.